It's Jason Bryant, Glenn Gormley, and Kevin Hazard. Today, we'll be talking NCAA Wrestling Championships. They are coming to Philadelphia. Third weekend in March. It is the most wonderful time of the year. And if you are somehow still listening after that serenade of holiday music, I applaud you. Along with, again, Kevin Hazard and Glenn Gormley, I'm Jason Bryant. Normally, we have Glenn who break down a lot of stats, and we take a topic and we tackle it. Today, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to tackle a lot of stats, and we're actually going to go through those stats in a way that you can follow along with your favorite wrestling tournament, that being the NCAA Division I Wrestling Championships, again, coming to Philadelphia's Wells Fargo Center. Wells Fargo Arena, Wells Fargo Center. It's one of the two. There's a lot of Wells Fargos. I know the one in Des Moines, Wells Fargo Arena, the one in Tempe. I better get that right before I have to announce it. But anyway, Glenn, Kevin, this is the time of year where people like yourself also dig into stats, because you've got to fill out brackets, you've got to win belts, you've got bar bets with your buddies, and you've got things that you remember that you know your friend doesn't remember, and you've got sucker bets left and right too. Not condoning gambling, but I'm saying it's like we've got all this type of stuff that centers around our most favorite 3 days in March.
Yes, Jason. I love when, ever since you've put out this guide, it's my favorite thing to read every year, because I'm a numbers guy, I'm a stats guy, I'm a wrestling guy. So it's everything I need in one. So I really appreciate you putting this out. And I know I could speak for a lot of the William Mary guys that agree with me on that.
I spent all weekend, starting Friday night, glued to my television. I had my iPad, I had a laptop, and the TV. And so a lot of times I had 2 and 3 things going. So I've got some really good film information, but the guide is what I need to finish off everything for the weekend coming up.
I know one of our mutual friends here, the guys that you spend a lot of time with from the William and Mary gang, Rob Larimore, for example. Every year since I started putting, hey, can you get this out faster? Can you get this out faster? Can you get this out fast? I promise it the Tuesday before the Nationals, because that is the day I leave. Now, as the public address announcer, we've got meetings starting on Tuesday night. We need to be there Tuesday. We prep, we do sound check, we do a lot of things on Wednesday. So Tuesday, once I have to get into the job part of my responsibilities with the NCAA championships, I really can't do a whole lot more with it other than maybe swapping out some information if there's a replacement. I will run edits, and in case you're not clear on what I'm talking about here, when I say the guide, I'm going to go on screen here. So if we go over here to MattTalkOnline.com/guide, I've got it now up on the screen for you. Use the discount code MattStats. I'm going to do this first. Why? Because this is where people get tripped up about the discount code. You have to add this to your cart. Now, it retails for $40. It's worth every penny. So, okay, we've clicked it. Now we go to checkout. Well, I don't see the discount. Just chill. We're good. Hit checkout. There's the discount code right here. Matt Stats. Click apply. The discount has been applied. Now you can pay with PayPal. You can pay with your credit card, PayPal, Stripe. We've got that here. You enter information. You go to your checkout. Boom. It's that simple in terms of how to check out. It'll send you a download link immediately through a company called Selfie, Sellfy. So keep an eye on that. So buying it is easy. Now, I cannot help you with the Android if you want to carry this with you. This is mobile friendly. And on an iPhone, though, basically, you'll get the link. It'll download through your browser. So you want to go to your downloads in your phone. So typically, you'll go your files or downloads if you've got an iPhone. That's where you're going to find it if you download it to your phone. If it goes to your computer, you'll have a download right there. You can save it to your machine, and then you can maybe airdrop it or send it to your computer. Android folks, I don't have one, so I cannot tell you how your files are handled, but it is a PDF file. It's easily found. You can easily move it from one place to the next. So just keep that in mind. So there's that Matt Stats code right down there. Well, hold on. Right down there on the screen. And that's how you get it. So that's the simple buying process. So we've got that out of the way. What's next for you, Glenn?
All right. Jason, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Kevin and I want to ask you some questions. And we'll start at the top. Okay. Give us a little history on the announcers and how you and Kevin Hazard got involved in this.
Well, Kevin's been announcing a lot longer than Brian has, hasn't he? No,
I mean, Brian has it. Excuse me.
So hold on one second. Let me. So the announcers portion of it. So this is what happens. So, and this is all in the guide. There is a history about it. And I'll zoom up to that and actually show you. We'll start with that section of the preview guide. Let me share my screen here in a moment if I can just make sure it's ready to go, because this is, as we prepare for the show, things that I cannot control take hold. There we go. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for that. So let's go to the screen here. That's the wrong page. There we go. Let's try that. Speaking up, yes, the brief announcing history. So for those of you that are been around the sport a while, these are two of the most iconic people when it comes to the NCAA Wrestling Championship, Sandy Stevens and the late Ed Aliverti. They shared the microphone at this tournament for decades. Now, how long exactly? Well, Ed started back in 1973 when this thing was in Seattle. That was his advent to the tournament, and he was a music teacher in Washington. And Sandy had done an event or two, but really became part of the tournament. And I say an event or two. I think she'd worked the championships with Ed before then, but became a constant in 1982. So she did that for, let's see, math. I told there would be no math. I do plenty of math is in this guide. So here on the timeline, you can see where the other announcer, Sandy, was the constant from 82 to 2015. Her and AL, she worked with Todd Hibbs. She worked with the Don Blasingame, who stands too tall and too proud, from Oklahoma. Great guy. Boom. Great. Just, you hear, I think Fargo is when I think Don. So that's the line of succession when it comes to the announcing of the championships. And I put this in here because Brian and I have been announcing this event since 2016. I've done the Division II, I've done the Division III and the NAI since 2016 as well. So this is one to kind of honor those who came before us, knowing that, that 2016 year Madison Square Garden was kind of tough because, a lot of people were not happy with the change, but a lot of people also didn't know that it was going to be me and Brian that came on board. So that was a transition. I want to make sure that we honored those that laid the groundwork, because I don't have ideas on how to call a match right if I'd never heard Ed Aliverti at the Virginia Duels the first time in 1995. So speaking from my own announcing style, I borrow a little bit from Sandy. I borrow a little bit from Ed. I borrow a little bit from WWE announcer Howard Finkel. So there's a couple things that I pay homage to. I have my own style, but for example, the way I call a fall is very much like this man here, fall, Ed Aliverti, just so poetic. And he has his gift of gab was amazing. He'd, always walk by him at the Virginia Duels. Usually I'd be coming from the after party when he's getting up to wake up for the day, and be like, Mr. Aliverti, hello, young man. Just, always such a good dude Ed was. And, he was an iconic voice of the sport, still is. You can't go back and see old Olympic footage without hearing, from the United States of America, Isaac Anderson, it's Ed, so that's the breakdown on how we all got in there is in the preview guide. I know you're not going to buy it for that, but that's the preview guide we got to pick up. Also, it reminds me, I got to update the skyline on page 14. So as I'm going through this, page 14, because this is last year's version. This is not this year's version, but that's the brief history of the announcing stuff. We got asked, me and Brian said yes. They asked me, I said, who do you want to work with? I said, give me Brian. So we're good. So that's kind of the brief summary of how Brian and I got started with it.
So this is your 10th year coming up.
This will be the 10th year, 9th tournament, because, well, we know what happened in 2020.
Yeah. So
we all missed it.
The only thing that I don't know is, are you going to sing the national anthem this year
Never.
like Ed used to do?
Never. That was his thing, and it will always be his thing. So a little side note. So at St. Cloud State, which I will actually plug my hat here, I got my Huskies hockey hat. The announcer who preceded me had done this, Chuck Clausen, for 32 years. He had a trademark. Let's see. Do I have it here? I got to make sure my sound. Let's see. Where is it? Do I have? Yeah, he has a trademark. Where is it? I'm really not prepared for any of this stuff today. I apologize. There we go. Trademark. Oh, I've got it muted. That doesn't help either. Man, this is bad production value. Sorry, folks. He does the woo. He does a Go Huskies woo. And Go Huskies woo is kind of like the hashtag, or kind of like the thing. I don't woo. That's Chuck's thing, but I made sure it was part of the program. So I got the student section. So when I would, after a goal, I would say, Go Huskies. They would do the woo. And now we have a woo scrolling across the video board. So I am very aware of who came before me, and I am very aware of the traditions that they set forth. For example, Sandy and a guy named Ed Bankowski, they came up with, with the how many years have you been attending, which we do during that halftime break during the finals now. That's the perfect place for it. Todd Hibbs came up with the senior send-off, which he brought to every division. So last week at the NAIA championships with the seniors, when they walk off the mat for their placement match, win or lose, they get a thing. So those traditions that we didn't create, but we keep with them. We keep them as part of the tournament too. So it's not our creations. Those are the things that were laid before us, and we pay honor to those too. So but this isn't about me on the mic. That's just one thing I do here, by the way.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Now, Jason, another question. What inspired you to compile the guide?
I'm a glutton for punishment. Honestly, as we go back, this is last year's guide, as you see on the screen. I keep up a different theme. So back in 2013, I was in one of my many jobs in wrestling. I joke that I've had more jobs in wrestling than Sammy Henson or Wade Chalice, and that usually gets a joke. But I was working for Amateur Wrestling News, and we were with the Amateur Wrestling News and the Open Mat. It had a merger. And I was running the magazine, I was designing the magazine, and Eric Betterman said, it'd be cool if we did like a championship digital. And I was like, all right, yeah. So I tried it with the Midlands that year, where it had the bios and just like headshots and stuff. And it was very simple. I mean, it was maybe 60 pages, but it was like six athletes per column. It had the wins and losses of the athletes, which I pulled off of Track Wrestling and formatted. And it was a digital thing. And then I printed up like one or two of them. And just so we had at the table when they were doing some audio broadcasting. And for years I had been kind of a stats gopher for ESPN, and they had this big binder of stuff. And I lent my copy to Tim Johnson and the producer, Jerry Daniels, the producers at ESPN, and they're like, "This is great. Can we use it?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Then the Amateur Wrestling News Open Mat merger kind of fell apart. I ended up setting out on my own with Mat Talk Online. But that book, I'm like, you know what? That was a really good thing because it answered a lot of questions I wanted to have versus having 8 browser windows open or going to Track Wrestling. Now we have WrestleStat. But it was for doing all these things. I was like, there's a quick way to answer these questions. We don't have that old NCAA guide anymore. They used to be about this big. I probably have like 50 of them here, the hard copies. They're not very big. I think they stopped them in 1982. So there was a real lack of actual information, and I never actually got access to the championship program because I'm covering the tournament, so I'm not going upstairs and buying the program. We had a little media kit, but I'm like, there's more missing here, and there's questions that I want answers to. And Jay Hammond, when he was still alive, had access to his database, the Wrestling Stats database, and he would he could pull it up. And he would work there, but then after a while, we'd have to go to Jay for everything. And then Jay was getting older, and he handed off the database to me. He passed away several years ago, but in that work, I was like, well, take all that work and put it together and build it, and then add more to it, and then add more to it, because we always get how many states have the most All-Americans? Okay, well, let's pull that up. So I've been compiling stats for years on this when I was at Intermat, when I was at USA Wrestling, the Open Mat. So I just put it in a digital format, and then I was like, well, I've never really give it away, or this is a lot of work. Why don't I just try to sell it? So I started selling it for $10, and then it sold okay. And I'm like, well, there's a lot more here. I'm like, it was like 100 and some pages. Like, this is definitely worth more than $10 because I look at the program was being sold for whatever, double that. And I was like, well, I have triple the information. So I then added more to it, and then I added more to it, and then I added more to it. And every time there's guys like you that ask me questions, and I was like, well, I should put that in a guide for next year. Well, I should put that in a guide for next year. Well, there's just something like, well, when was the last time? I want to be able to answer those questions with this. I want you to be able to answer those questions by going to this book and be like, yeah, I can tell you the last time or the most All-Americans that was won by a team was this, or how many times have there been this, or how many three-time All-Americans have there been? How many two-time national champions have there been? I want to answer all those questions because you've got them. They always come up. Hey, who was that guy that was so, I don't have all the brackets in here, but I do have links to all the brackets in here. So up here, we go to 2000. Let's pull that up. We're going to open up this page, and we're going to, and you can't see it on the screen, but that link just took you to WrestlingStats.com's Jay Hammond's brackets. So, for example, like all those brackets are still there. I don't have them personally contained in there, but they're all in there. So that's one thing that we can do pretty easily to link the history to it that's online, as well as putting a book together that has pretty much everything you need. So the genesis was really is my own curiosity plus the opportunity to put more stuff out there. So, and then since then, It is taken on a mind of its own. It is over, let's see, last year's was 258 pages. And here's the thing, the NCAA program, as good as it is, half of it's ads. I have like 3 ads because from 3 people that have been supporting me the entire time. Granted, maybe 4. Tony Rotundo and Mark Lundy, who I use their photos for. Compound with Cliff Fretwell. He's been supporting me since day negative, well, ever since, as he likes to say. And then Reslite, who's been sponsoring the newsletter for a while. So that's pretty much all you're going to get. You're going to get 250 some plus pages of content. So that was kind of the impetus for it, is like, I just want to be able to answer those questions. And then again, ESPN, I print up about 10 of these things. I used to use them for the Mat Side reporters. I give them in the production truck uses it. We have them at the head table. So it's basically become a resource that's it's, while not officially endorsed by the NCAA, we use it a lot of places there.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
do you and Brian use that guide, and do you do it on? You don't have it. You have it online, not in a paper format.
I do print about 10 of them. And thing is, they cost about $40 to print, even with a discounted, like the UPS store or FedEx office. So that's the thing. I don't sell a hard version of this, a hardback or a hard copy of this, because I couldn't distribute it, and 2, it's a lot, because I don't have it's not a large print order. I can't have this stuff turned around like that. So I'll take I usually print them up the Wednesday before. So if there's anything that happens Wednesday night that changes the brackets, well, I'm not gonna print new ones. I may be able to get to it digitally, but once that first whistle blows, I probably can't update anything anymore, because again, we're working here. So, but yeah, we have the computers open. Brian's got it open. We Command F, Control F on our PDFs, and it's a searchable digital document. So it's pretty easy to go through and find stuff. One thing I've also done last year is, if you're scrolling through it like on your phone, and I need to go back to the brackets, every page has a link to the brackets back to it. So, I'll take it up and open it up and send it over to that link. Just took you right over to Track Wrestling. This is last year's page, of course. So you can see how everything took you back there. So it's kind of, you get everything you need. So you might end up with like 15 windows of track open to get back to the brackets, because you've clicked on them so many times.
Yeah. Well, if you had to print them and distribute them, you'd need a tractor trailer.
Yeah. I will say, if you do print this, double-sided, draft, black and white. And if you want to spend an extra $20 or $25, or, depending on how many, you don't have to, I would say, if you don't want the history, or you just want the bios, I'd say there's ways to print this and print what you need if you want to keep them. Like if you've got your draft on a Thursday morning with your St. Patty's Day crew, you can print out just certain pages that would be great to take along with you. And make sure that you hit that promo code to save your $10 when you're on those drafts, because with these things, you're going to win those leagues too, because you're going to have quick access to all this stuff that you may not have time to go through WrestleStat or Track to cross-reference everything. This is just a quick scroll. Boom, you got it.
All right, thank you for
nudge,
that,
nudge.
Jason. Yes, exactly. Let me address something really quick here. The most common question I get from the William Mary guys is the seeding process. Now, it's a complicated thing. Jason has it all lined up on the guide. Because there's a lot of numbers and complicated stuff, I'm recommending that if you're really interested in this, you buy the guide and read it on your own. Okay, for that and the automatic qualifiers and all that stuff. It's a complicated process, but it's explained very well in the guide.
It's a lot of math.
Okay.
So initially, again, allocations, we've got the 3 parts here. This is all in here. Earning the allocations, the sliding scales, earning the at-larges. And right now, as we record this, I think right before we started the at-large bids, so it's Tuesday, March 11th. So the at-large bids email came out just before we hit record. So I do not have a completed set of some questions that we were talking about or getting to. So the brackets will be out Wednesday night, March 12th. So if you're watching this before the brackets come out, we're still waiting for a certain amount of data to become available so I can complete it and get this thing out for you. But there's, it's a lot of math. Here's the seating criteria right there. This explains it. I want to bold this part because, Glenn, this is the reason I put this in here.
Thank you.
Previous performance at the NCAA championships has 0 to do with the seating formula. So I know that the thing is, we've been with this type of format since I want to say 2009. It's morphed over the years, but the basis of, previous stuff hasn't been a thing for a very long time. Current year data. That is the buzzword. That is the thing you need to understand. Current year data. Just because you won a title 3 years ago doesn't mean you're automatically, it's not a thing. Get it out of your mind, because we haven't been that way for almost a decade and a half. Wait a minute. 20 years ago was 05. So about 15, 16 years we've been at this type of thing where it hasn't been a thing. So has zero to do with it. So no previous stuff. But yeah, there it is up on the screen. There's a primer on that.
I'm so glad you put that in bold, because Kevin and I with the William Mary guys.
I put it big, bold, and red, so even Kevin can't miss it.
Yeah, we'll get about 100 questions. But 2 years ago, this guy placed 8th. It doesn't matter.
Page 55. Page 50. Well, it was 55 on last year. So by the way, what you're looking at this year on the screen, for those of you that are watching, if you're listening, MattTalkOnline.com/guide, discount code MattStats, save $10. You scroll through and it's there it is. So we're looking through last year's guide because, again, the data hasn't been released to the public yet, so I can't toy with it until we're done there. So that being said, that's on page 55. Did you know also that March is National Athletic Training Month? This is longtime Clarion trainer Jim Thornton, who is part of the NCAA medical staff for a very long time. So he would always joke, hey, did you know March is so... when you see a trainer out there, it might be NCAA bingo out there. So if you hear that, it might be one of those things, take a sip of your beverage whenever you hear, did you know? Maybe you can play that. That's another thing. Maybe I'll put a bingo card in this year for the sayings that we have out there. Like, anytime you hear me make a WWE reference, like Jerry Briscoe, a longtime WWE talent scout, and he was one of the Stooges back for the pro wrestling fans that remember that. He'd always love the callbacks to some things like that, and then be like, there's the you get a little color. It's, you're bleeding a little bit. Oh, I got some color, getting blood time out there. Anytime you throw some of those out there, it's always kind of fun. And Mac Ryder always has this fake Monopoly money with like Tom Brands' face on them and Sandy's face on them. They make side bets with each other that mean absolutely nothing. So people have a lot of fun with it. So there's a lot of things you can do with the info in this guide to have fun with your friends.
Thank you. Another question we get a lot of times is, how do we decide the location and who makes that decision on the national tournament?
So that is not something that the guide will handle. However, just so people know, this is something I answer a lot on the message boards. It's up for bid. They put, there's bid proposals out there. First of all, the city's got to want to have the event. You can't just say, we need to put it out west. I agree. I'd love to go to Portland. I'd love to go to Denver. I'd love to go to Phoenix. I'd love to go to Vegas. Those cities have to bid, and their bids have to check a certain amount of boxes. Can you give, this? Are you allocating this? How many rooms can you give us this? Transportation, signage at the airport, things like that are all important factors into the bid. What is your guaranteed seating? What are your athlete areas? So all those things come into play. It's not just who has the best financial bid, but all those things have to be put together. Philadelphia, the last time we were there, the arena is fantastic. There's a lot of space on the floor. It's an NHL arena. They've got some entry points from the tunnels from the side as well. It's not just a straight end zone 4 tunnels. It's home of the Philadelphia Flyers, which I'm kind of indifferent on anyway. But I like Philly as a sports town. Just you've got to be there. Just don't tell anybody you're an opposing fan. You'll enjoy yourself. I went to Citizens Bank Park one time as an Angels fan. It did not go very well for me. That being said, Philly's a great sports town, although they did boo Santa.
Yes, we did.
But the facility's going to be great.
Yes,
so back to the bid process. So with the bid process, they've got to bid on it. You've got to have your CBB and your sports commission got to want it. And those are the key things. You can't, they should put it there to grow the sport. The best way for you to pay attention to get involved in that is talk to your sports commission and get involved. It's like your local community elections and stuff like that. You want to be, you can, if you think X city should do it, ask. And if they can't do it and they don't have the room, some places like Vegas, I know it's been a hit. People talk about Vegas. Well, the weekend that we are is the first weekend of NCAA basketball. And that is Vegas's biggest weekend of the year because everybody's gambling on March Madness. They don't we're not their primary tenant for hotel rooms that weekend. It would be everybody coming in to gamble on basketball. So that's one thing you also got to take into consideration. So they look at the bid packages, they look at the CVB, they look at transportation, communications, facilities, athlete experiences, all sorts of things. So proximity to hotels. There's a lot of moving parts that go with it. And of course, everything I've said, you could probably pick apart and be like, well, this, and this. It's a whole package thing. It's just one place might lack, one place might, be through the roof on. So I don't have any information on how those things are actually finally decided, but that's the problem. You got to bid on it. They got to bid. You can't just put it somewhere.
Thank you for that, Jason. One other thing that the William Mary guys always harp on. Could you please explain to everybody the OW award and who grants it and how it's, if you could just explain this one more time for the people. And you have to do it next year for the fans too.
Well, every year. So towards the end of the session, we've got the awards, we're doing the awards. And when we get done, we say, and that the championships are now closed, and automatic we got somebody yell, what about OW? The outstanding wrestler is not an award presented by the NCAA. We learned a lot about what is and what isn't from the NCAA back in 2020 when the NWCA announced the first and second team All-Americans. Some people are like, oh, that's an NWCA All-American. That's not an NCAA All-American. The NCAA does not award All-American honors. That is up to the individual sport to determine how they do that. In our case, it's the Wrestling Coaches Association, which names a Division I All-American team. That for years has simply just been the place winners. So the place winner and the all-award All-American have been synonymous with each other up until we learned, oh, wait, in 2020, the NWCA named the first and second teams, and then they named honorable mentions. So you're hearing terms like All-American and placer in different worlds now, because we can have a 5-time All-American and a 4-time placer. This is the last year we should have that, because those COVID kids, the COVID era kids are now aging out of these extra years of eligibility, at least in terms of those that have wrestled in the tournament 5 times. Still got a couple of those, like Carter Starachi, for example. But the OW is an NWCA award. It is voted on by the coaches. The Coach of the Year is an NWCA award, voted on by the coaches. The Assistant Coach of the Year, some places it's the Assistant Coaching Staff of the Year, is voted on by the coaches. So the end of the tournament, before the end, they get sent out a ballot to their phone. It's all digital now. So there is not like they're not counting OW ballots at the table like we did 25 years ago. It's digital. It's like a SurveyMonkey link or an Alchemy link or something like that. Boom, boom, boom. When we fill it out and they have the stats, boom. When the time gets cut off, here's the OW. And whoever, whether it be Rob Cole, who does Coach of the Year because it's named after his dad, whoever's Moyer's usually doing the OW or Most Falls or something like that. Those are, there are NCAA awards. Most Dominant and Wrestler of the Year are NCAA awards. OW is not an NCAA award. So all those things that are extra have to come after the championships have officially closed. So OW is going to happen after the official close of the championships.
Thank you for explaining that, Jason. Okay, how long have we had 330 wrestlers, approximately 330 wrestlers at this tournament?
Glenn, you know the answer to that because it's in the book, because you've done your research.
98.
So we can go back and look participant history by year. And Glenn is setting up a lot of these questions, so you can buy the guide. This also goes to the time of the research. So we see on page 15, I can tell you the participants by history, and I don't say qualifiers. Semantics. Why do I not say that? Because there are people who have qualified that got hurt and could not compete. So you, like Kevin Beasley, for example, my buddy wrestled at that school in Norfolk, transferred to Michigan for his grad year, qualified, but got hurt, could not compete. Well, he was an NCAA qualifier. If I don't, I just say, so no, it's participants. So if you're competing in the tournament, I'll put you as that's why I use the term participant. So a little unnecessary facts there. So we go back, I'll tell you how many schools, how many wrestlers, how many schools had a placer. That's all in a scroll. So we can go back and look. And the field The number of wrestlers, 394, was in 1970. That was the last year. And then we went to qualifying systems and more of a format that we have. So we see they're whittling down, and we got to about 1990. That's when D2 and D3 were phased out. Dan Russell, I believe, was the last D2 wrestler to be grandfathered in under that. I think he wrestled in 91 or 92. But we kind of settled on that 330 number right around 1998, 1999. So some years you'll see a 329 here. That is because, again, Jay Hammond's database really helped start this. Didn't have maybe who the entry was before it was pulled out of the bracket. So I'd have to go through the pages of Amateur Wrestling News, which on the screen, I got a pile of them right there, filed from years. So I have to go and maybe find out who was scratched at the tournament, if that was actually reported. But 330 has been a consistent since the late 90s.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that's nice about the way they do it now since then is the fact that it's a lot more quantifiable. I mean, the seating, etc., was kind of, back room, and the entries were kind of back room, and then they made it, so there was pretty, not rigid, but really good guidelines, and I think it's become a much better way to get the wrestlers into the tournament.
Yeah, the wild card meetings prior to 2009, they caused people not to be friends anymore. Like there's some stuff, and there was some. It's just weird. I love this format. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. We know it's not perfect. No system is going to be perfect. But this system is much more, I mean, it's much more democratic. I mean, you win enough matches, you're good. You don't have to worry about, well, we need to get this many guys to the round of 12. And I will use this as an example. And it was from the old CAA, in which the year Ben Askren was on a tear. There were people that were kind of fleeing the weight class, allegedly, because like, well, we're not going to win. Ben's just destroying everybody. So the thought was from the conference formerly known as the Colonial Athletic Association. Now it's the Coastal. Does not sponsor wrestling anymore, partially because that school in Norfolk and a school in Fairfax left the conference, and then we know how that went. The situation is they were trying to get more round of 12 athletes at 174, so it would help them get more bids. That old historical data, the 5-year rolling average, which is you could have wrestlers that didn't actually compete with that were not actually in college at the time, determining who got bids. So the CAA took 4 74-pounders because they had a better chance at getting, they thought, all of those wrestlers to the blood round, and they left a guy named Ryan Williams home from that school in Norfolk, who ended up being an eventual NCAA runner-up. He was third behind 2 All-Americans, Don Fish from Ryder and Charles Griffin from Hofstra. So the new system, the system we have now, Willie doesn't get left home. And the collective 174s that year don't go 0-6 because one did not get to go prior. So they took 4. 1 was scratched before the tournament, and the other 3 went 0-6 that year. So that's my lesson of why I like this system better than the wild card system. A little history.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm not bitter at all. I'm not bitter at all.
And I remember some. I remember some of those wild card votes at the old EIWA. When I was Billy's assistant at William Mary. But yeah, guys, since 2009, we've had 33 guys per weight class qualify. And as like Jason said, sometimes not all are healthy enough to wrestle in there. Okay, what Jason said real quick: 1970, we had the most wrestlers ever, 394. Okay, in 1980, we had 128 teams with qualifiers. That's the most ever. And in 1986, we had 46 schools with All-Americans, which was the most ever. And that's great. There's some things you can find out once this guide comes out, like how many brothers are in the tournament, etc. Some small, great trivia questions like that we're not ready to answer yet because, as Jason said, the at-large bids are just coming out as we're recording this. But we can answer this, okay? What school has won the most titles?
Well, we know that's Oklahoma State, 34 and counting, as they like to say.
Yep. And then Iowa's second with 24. Penn State's third with 12. What coach has won the most titles?
That would be the year of our Lord Gable, right?
Yes, the year of our Lord Gable.
I'm stealing that from my buddies at Blood Round. Tommy and Kevin jokingly said, "Yeah, it's the Blood Round Wrestling Podcast here in the year of our Lord Gable." So it's always kind of funny to not to poke any blasphemy at there, but I felt like it was prime time for me to finally answer that way.
Okay, that was perfect. Gable's got 15. E.C. Gallagher and Cale Sanderson both have 11 as of right now. Okay.
I don't think Gallagher's going to get a lot more.
No, Gallagher's stuck on 11, and I think
Yeah.
Sanderson might win another 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 with the way he's going. Okay, what coach has the longest Division I tenure, Jason?
Jay Weiss at Harvard. Jay Weiss at Harvard is, I can tell you that is, actually, I can probably have to pull up this year's guide for that because I updated the numbers.
30 some years, right?
Yeah, he's over 30 years. Because we had Tom Borelli and John W. Smith retire last year. So if I can scroll up my page again, I've got my other. I'm not gonna scroll on screen for you anymore, just because that makes for bad. Of course, I can't find what I'm looking for. Like I said, I've got my preview guide working on the screens behind me. As I have it up. So let's see. I got to remember where that is. That is because my table of contents isn't linked up yet. So, which is why I've got to scroll through these things. But in there is a ton of trivia, one of which is coaching tenures. And it will break down every coach. It'll also have how long they've been there. So, if I can find this correctly, man, I should have just had page numbers for these things on here. It would make it for a much better example. All right, so Jay Weiss has been at Harvard for 30. This is 31st season, followed by Brian Smith and Joel Greenlee. Brian Smith at Missouri, Joel Greenlee at Ohio. Both have been there 27 years. 25 years for the Mangler, Mark Manning at Nebraska. So those are our quarter centurions that are still actively coaching. First-year coaches, while we're on the flip side, we got John Stutzman at Bloom, Donnie Vincent at Buffalo, Ben Bennett at Central Michigan, Donnie Pritzlaff at Columbia, Jamie Franco at Hofstra, John Arceri at LIU, David Taylor at Oklahoma State, and Adam Hall at Utah Valley.
Thank you for that. Okay. Now, we mentioned a little bit ago that we'll see how many brothers in this tournament. Now, what was the most number of brothers in one tournament?
Off the top of my head, I think
from one family. From one family.
One family. Oh, it's the Fine Silvers. The law offices of Fine Silver, Fine Silver, Fine Silver, and Fine Silver. Yeah. They had 2 sets of twins for Duke. Although, to the other question, last year I believe we had 9 sets of brothers in the tournament. The most I can remember, I want to say, was St. Louis in either 03 or 04. Maybe, because I remember Sandy said something, and I walked over. I went through because I had looked this up when I was at Intermat. So it must have been anywhere between 05 and 08 in that range. And I definitely thought it was St. Louis. There were 13 sets of brothers one year. I remember that, and because there was somebody had said there was 9, and I went through and I said no, there's these 2 because they were on separate teams. So like the Stout brothers, for example, one's at Pitt, one's at Princeton. So that type of stuff is also in the guide.
Yeah, that's great. Tell us a little bit about 1962 115 with the 4 guys from Granby. That's one of my favorite stories.
Well, what's funny about this is Ben Askren he'll jump out on Twitter and ask questions, and sometimes he'll tag me in the question, sometimes he won't, or he was on FR. I think this one was an FRL question last year when he was on with the crew at FRL, and I remember this being the case because it was talking about the 3 Arrowhead guys. He had 3 wrestlers: Keegan O'Toole, Mitchell Messenbrink, and Noah Mulvaney. They were all at the same weight class. I'm pretty sure those are the 3 from Heartland Arrowhead in Wisconsin. So it was like, and those are kids that he coached with his club. And Ben went to Arrowhead. So I was like, nah, I said, is that the most? I was like, well, I haven't been able to nail down all the high schools of all time, but I do know that in 1962, 4 wrestlers from one high school were at the same weight class. Mike Grandstaff from Virginia Tech was a Granby guy. Gray Simons from Lock Haven was a Granby guy. Let's keep going down here. We've got Bill Merriam from Lehigh was a Granby guy. Okla Johnson from Michigan State was a Granby guy. Now, if you've listened to my Etched in Stone series with Gray Simons, here's an interesting side note with those 4. Okla Johnson was a 4-time state champ at Granby. for legendary coach Billy Martin. Well, Gray went to the 9th grade early, and then he lost like the second half of his senior year. So he only wrestled. He was on the squad his freshman year. He got beat out by Mike Grandstaff for the starting spot. Mike Grandstaff wins the state title. The next year, Grandstaff starts. Gray wins. And then the next year, Grandstaff goes to Norview, beats Gray in the state finals. Then the next year, Gray can't start. Bill Merriam, because he's not eligible, Bill Merriam wins the state title. So Gray's tied to all those guys. So yeah. So and Gray Simons won that weight class, beating Mike McCracken of Oklahoma State in the finals. So 4 Granby guys in a weight class that had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. More than, what's 4 divided by 14? Now it's more than, what is that, 30%? 30% of the weight class was Granby Comets.
So Gray Simons only won 1 state title, high school
Sophomore
state
year.
title?
Yeah.
That's an interesting stat right there.
Won 7 college national titles. Won 1 high school state title.
1 high school.
Yeah.
Kyle
Yeah.
Dake won
That shows
more
you how
national
tough
titles than he
Virginia
did
is.
state titles.
Wow. Okay.
I clearly was not alive when that happened.
No. Okay. Have there ever been 2 people from the same high school in the finals?
Yeah, Mount Carmel, Tony Davis, TJ Williams, 1999.
Yep. Thank you for that. That's wild.
Hold on.
Who makes the decision of the order of the championship finals Saturday night? Like, what weight class is going to be the
Television. Straight television. So there is a discussion. The NCAA has a discussion with ESPN. They look at the matchups. They look at, hey, should it be this? Should it be this? Is there a team score race? So sometimes, like, well, the one year with Gable in the finals, just leave it in order, wrestle it. And then one year we're like, all right, we'll start at 74 because we went in at 65. So that's the discussion between the NCAA committee and television.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty obvious what's going to be the last one this year.
Funny things can happen at the tournament.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Have wrestlers ever placed as they were seeded 1 through 8 in any weight class any year? Since
They
they've
started
seeded 8?
placing 8 in 1979, so they started seeding to 12. And in no place in history have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 at this tournament ever happened. 1, 2, 3, 4 happened because, well, that would make sense. But back then they only seeded 4. But 1 through 8 has never happened. So if you're wanting to play the lottery, well, and you want to throw your money away, bet on that happening because it won't happen.
Yep. Okay. Kevin, go ahead and ask some questions.
You go ahead.
Okay. No, I didn't want to hog the screen. Okay.
No, we're
city
splitting
with-
the screen. It's 3 of us on here now. So
Yeah. The city with the most NCAA champions.
well, you can find that in the guide, but it was a place we were not that far away. We were not that we just at. Actually, a lot of you were at there this weekend, Tulsa, because hosted the Big 12 tournament, Tulsa, Oklahoma, with 40 something off the top of my head. I want to say 48. 48.
48.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to recite this from memory. It's what I'm trying. I'm trying to sound smarter than I actually am. It's not going so well for me.
Well, you've had a lot of data to compile this. But what school has the most OWs?
Oh, that'd be Oklahoma State.
Yep. Okay. And I put this together. How many multiple most pins guys have we had? Guys have won the Gregorian Award more than once.
Ooh, let's see. I don't know that off the top of my head, Glenn.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I do know that off the top of my head because
You do?
not off the top of my head because I put it together a little bit ago.
Yeah, because that's when you
Magic
didn't
Man.
feed me before.
Yep. Magic Man, Gary Albright, in the year of our Lord Gable, and Hodge.
Gary Albright. Yep, he was a Husker.
For some reason, I thought Askren had done it one year.
I just looked at it real quick when I was
Years.
waiting to start this show, and those are the
Well,
fours I
one
found.
thing I also do have in the guide when we talk about most falls is I have the standings on all time. So we have them by
High school.
year, which last year was Wyatt Hendrickson. He had 3 falls in 10 minutes and 6 seconds. But all right, I'll turn this on you, which you can only get in the guide because I'm the only one who's ever compiled this stat and listed it this way. Most falls, least time, fastest ever. So of
Wyatt
all the most
Hendrickson.
falls, least times, you can find this in the guide.
Gable and Magic Man. Gable had 5 pins twice. Bruce Kenseth had 5 pins. I'm drawing a blank on who was the one, and I saw your thing, the one who did it the quickest. I thought it was Wyatt Hendrickson for some reason, but maybe not. No, he didn't have 5.
Well,
Daryl
12
Peterson
seconds.
in 1985
Peterson.
is what it is. 5 falls get this in 5 minutes and 31 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
And I didn't know that before. I looked
So he
at it.
didn't
And,
come out of the first period ever.
Yeah. One thing I've
Pretty
also got to
incredible.
add is I don't have this in here, and I've got to write this down. I probably, if I didn't put it in last year, I probably should. How many wrestlers have been the number 1 seed 4 times in the modern era? And I have to, okay,
Cale
let me
Sanderson,
clarify.
for sure.
Modern era is kind of a weird term because we have various eras in wrestling. In the era in which we've seeded to 12, or at least more than 12, so we've placed 8. So since 1979, let's go there. How many wrestlers have been seeded number 1 4 times?
Cale Sanderson for sure is 1.
That's 1.
Okay.
Smith,
No, not Smith.
not John, the younger brother.
Oh, Pat. No, I don't think
Pat.
he was. Well, I think Dake was seated over Taylor that one year when Dake beat Taylor, so that takes him out. Dake was not seated number 1 the first year he won.
Or the second.
What's that?
He wasn't
Or the
seated number
second.
1 at 149 either. Darian Caldwell
Okay.
was.
Okay. Stieber? No, I don't think he.
Tricky thing is he only won 2 national titles.
Well, the Taylor jumps out when you say 1, 2, but I think Dake was seated number 1 above him.
Tim Krieger
Tim
Okay.
Krieger.
was the number 1 seed all 4 years and finished 5th, 1st, 2nd, 1st. The joke is comedian Greg Warren talks about wrestling Tim Krieger in college, and he goes, talking about West Roper, Darren Warren, give it to him. It's like, I was wrestling this guy who lost 3 times his entire career. There are some days I lost 4. He's talking about Tim Krieger.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Wow.
pretty sure Tim Krieger only lost 3 times his college career, twice in the tournament his freshman year, and then the junior year in the finals.
Wow.
Yeah, so I may have to add that to the guide. All right, we need to.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got guide stuff to put together, boys.
Okay.
Where are we
then
at?
Let's
questions
wrap
have we
this
gone
show
through
up
already?
then. We've blown through all the questions that we have answers to right now. So
Well,
You
let
know-
me just put what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little pull the curtain back a little bit. That's not what I want to pull the curtain on. Let's go back to the other sheet. No, that's not it. Okay. Anyway, there's the Tim Krieger search. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump over. Once I get the right thing on the display, I think this is where we're at. Let's try that. Yeah, there we go. So right here on the page. So this is how I've done it. So if you are a fan of Philadelphia, if you're a fan of history, I think you're going to be pretty pleased with how this thing works because we've got a ton of them here. So here's this year, it's the guide. So I've got, we go with some presidential, some history. Here, if you buy this before we're out, you'll get this placeholder proof of purchase on it. But we have the founding fathers sitting here in an arena, ready to go with the guide. Now, I'm also a fan of crude humor. One of my favorite shows is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So there is a distinct theme running through this year. Last year, I went with the comic book theme. The year before, I went with the Nintendo, the NES cartridge theme, which probably was my favorite one ever. I had Mario stuff in it, and I had 8-bit stuff everywhere. This year, the prevailing theme is the gang goes to NCAAs. And if you're familiar with the show Always Sunny in Philadelphia, there will be some Easter eggs and some callbacks from the show in the guide. So I try to keep it light as well. So we've got a bit of a blend of, Franklin and the Declaration of Independence meets Patty's Pub, which oddly enough, if you go try to look for it, does not actually exist in Philadelphia. There's also the questions about cheesesteaks. By the way, it's not a Philly cheesesteak. It's just called a cheesesteak. You can do the touristy spots and Pat's at Geno's. I do recommend it for the experience. You can pretty much get a cab there at all times. There are better cheesesteaks to be had in Philadelphia. You can ask anybody who's a local, you'll get 15 different answers. One of the better spots that was near Drexel and Penn was called Abner's. I think they closed. There is a cheesesteak food truck right off the train station. I want to say 33rd, 34th Street, near the Drexel stop, called Horns, and it's a food truck. I ran into that food truck on the backside. There's a bunch of food trucks there. That was a real quality cheesesteak. So if you're taking the train in, maybe hop a block around the corner and go to Horns. They've got a little Instagram presence. They're not really prolific on it, but I enjoyed that cheesesteak. And as a big guy who spent a lot of time in central Pennsylvania, that's one, if you're traveling in, I would definitely recommend. It's kind of off the beaten path. So as we get to the guide, in here, I'll have this table of contents. Let me take the grid lines off. I use Adobe InDesign to do this, in case you're wondering. So we have a clickable table of contents. So if you've got a place to, your phone, your iPad, that'll all be there. We've got our schedule of events you'll need to know. These are all links to the brackets from the past. Your quick stuff that you'll want to know. Here's a quick stuff of who's the last champs, where's it been? And I break the eras up just so there's more questions. So you can see here the divisional era, because we started 3 divisions in 1974. Freshman eligibility became in 1969. So they kind of say the Gable era. Anything after Gable is a new era. I like to use the 4-year eligibility standard as a modern era. Then we have the university division, started in 1963, where we had the college and university divisions. Prior to that, it was just the NCAA championships. So we've got that. We've got our largest point spreads, which of course I had to update this from last year because Penn State blew the roof off the place. I kind of kept with my, Ross Bendick from the Foundation for Wrestling Art had these cool little graphics and such. So I used that trophy one for part of it from the 8-bit era. We keep this in here. Again, this is in the front end of the book. The other breakout that I added this year is like the champion. How many champs and AAs has the champion had? That wasn't found anywhere until I decided to throw that in last year. So the front end of the book has a lot of the basic stats. Then Glenn alludes to some of the questions that we've had, the announcing history. What I'll have, you see this in red, that means I haven't updated that yet. So it tells you how many years. One of the things I really like is when we get to the back, I'm going to scroll through because all this stuff is all blank stuff right now. This is also for your draft type stuff. Bonus victories. I'm going to add the dominator points this year, which is what the same metric the NCAA uses for most dominant. Basically, it's like a dual meet. If you wrestle every pin, you get 6, tech 5, 4, and 3. If you lose by 3, you lose by decision, you lose 3. So I have the dominant score. Kind of like your top 100 when it's sometimes to pick your fantasy baseball. The top scoring wrestler across the entire tournament. So if you're picking Madly, or if the top scoring wrestlers per weight class. So I'll have bonus points. I'll have all that stuff in here from the stats. I break out stats like you would not believe. If you need to look for some trends, here's how the overall seeding performance has been of those place winners over the last, in this point, since 1999, since we changed to the current weight class structure. Then we've got, the unseeded. We don't have unseeded wrestlers anymore. So this is one thing that Glenn was going to allude to, but we decided to pick up the pace. How did the unseeded do? What schools had the most unseeded placers? That's all in here. Of course, the gang loses a bar bet. I said it was. There's Patty's Pub right there. This is the stuff you argue about. What state has the most All-Americans? What state has the most national champions? Who are the 4 and, 5-time All-Americans and place winners? We're going to, we've got the Carter Starachi going for 5. Last year I had this with him and Aaron Brooks on their quest for 4 titles. Now Starachi's going for 5. His entire career, match by match, is in here. We had to expand this to 4-timers. We had Brooks and Starachi last year. We threw them in there. We have the finalists. We have the 2-time champs. And now then we have one of my favorite things. This is one of the big talking points from folks of your generation is, the D2 and D3 champs. They used to have a chance to, they only were there technically for 17 seasons because 74 was the start of the divisional era. There you see Big Carlton right there in the divisional era. And then we also have the era where schools with dual affiliations, like the aforementioned Gray Simons pictured there on your screen. Rick Sanders, for example, wrestled in 5 college, placed in 5 college tournaments. So you've got all sorts of bar trivia, the Goryaron that I talked to, who the OWs are, the wrestlers on the cover of Sports Illustrated, including there's a Tennessee guy in there, Glenn.
Yes,
Do you
there's
see that?
Emmanuel. I saw him
That's
there.
Frank
Oh, big
Emanuel, who,
orange.
side note, was my stepbrother's uncle. He's the reason I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. I've mentioned it on the show before. Frankie wrestled at the I want to say 61, 62, in that range, NCAA championships. I didn't catch this for years because he was listed under his name, his first name, Thomas Frank Emanuel. So it was, so it was my stepdad's first wife's brother. So, but he was around. So, my stepbrother was a Dolphins fan because Frankie played for the Dolphins. I actually have that SI here. I actually have all 3 of those SIs. I've donated 2 of them to the Hall of Fame. So the Hall of Fame those are the 3 wrestlers that have been on the cover of Sports Illustrated, including Danny Hodge right there. Other
And
things
Jason,
that I've added.
but- When Emmanuel qualified for UT, we did not have a team, a
Well,
varsity
here's the
team.
thing. The NCAAs were open back then.
Yeah.
That's so in the book that Bud Ford put together for you Tennessee Vols people, there is a little carve out about Frank wrestling at the NCAAs without a team. So that's a cool thing that, and again, it was a situation I didn't learn about Uncle Frankie wrestling until about 5 years ago. And this is a guy I was a Bucs fan because he was on the Buccaneers coaching staff when I was a kid. Streaks, this is one that's also very common. Question, when was the last time, with Iowa's got that streak of having a finalist. That's at 34 straight years. We've got the asterisk with a couple things. Of course, Cornell didn't compete in 2021. Oklahoma State's streak ended due to the death penalty back in 1993. So they were ineligible to compete that year. Multiple champions by team. We've got, what teams have had 5 champs in a year. That's all here. Again, I'm showing you the stuff that you can get. I'm not going to stay on there so you can screenshot it. The most prolific teams of all time, all the schools with the most medals, the most qualifiers, the eras through the generations. I'm not talking about T Swift. Blood round. My favorite stat in this whole book is this guy right here, Zach Sanders. Zach Sanders from Minnesota is the only wrestler in the era since 1979 where we place 8, where there is a true blood round, the round of 12, to have wrestled in that round 4 times and never lost. The only one in history that he never made a semifinal. He was a 4-time All-American, but he never lost in the blood round. Sadly, the only person to have gone to the blood round 4 times and lost every one of them was Mickey Philippi just a year or 2 ago for Pitt. So there's some real cool stuff with this picture. I love this picture of Zach and J-Rob. I found, I was like, you know what? That's cool. So Zach's a great dude. Jay's the reason I moved out to Minnesota. So those are some cool things. There's a lot of those blood round questions that come up that I get a lot. And of course, I added the graphic of John Lange this year. It's called Pulling a Lange. The wrestlers who have lost in the first round and come back to finish 3rd. And this also has to be quantified. 1997, is it 97 or 96? Yeah, 96. The advent of the full wrestleback. Prior, you had to lose in the first round. If you lost in the first round, the guy who beat you had to win. Because there are guys that went to the NCAAs with 0-1. You're a full 0-2 guy, 2 in barbecue if you at least qualify and don't win a match in this era. John was the first one to do it, lost the first round to David Wells of Cal Poly, came all the way back and finished 3rd. The last guy to do that was Tyler Kasak from Penn State, did it last year. Oddly enough, both number 7 seeds, both from Penn State. So that's another favorite stat that's in here. What teams' records are in the semis and the finals. This is also a new thing, new this year. What are the most loaded weight classes in NCAA history? People believe that like the 2009 149 pounds with the most champs and such. Like you could say that there were, that year, for example, there were 13 All-Americans. There were 8 individual titles out of that group alone, 6 individual champs. So I've broken that out. That was something that, this is another thing I do is where's the flow of teams per year, qualifiers per year. Sadly, I have to put teams that dropped in there like that school in Norfolk. And then also added, last year I added this, qualifiers per conference per year. So you can see the flow, the ebb and flow. This year we had our first automatic qualifier from Bellarmine. So that'll be in there. He was Southern Conference champion. So Bellarmine will be in the book for the first time officially. Here's our era, since 1974, the divisional era, where we're at with conferences and whatnot. So a lot of stuff. The championship bios will be in here. This is the last 90 to 100 pages I have to put together. I can't do that until those brackets come out. So that's the hard part. You got to wait for those seeds and be able to organize. I can have everything ready to go. It's just I need to sort them and whatnot. And then, of course, on the back page, I always leave a page for where we remember our fallen wrestling friends. Last year, we remembered Denny Deal, Tommy McMillan, and John Graham. So that's what I have here. So pay homage again to those of who we lost throughout the last year. So that is how the guide works. That's how it's put together. That's why I don't get any sleep this time of year. And I'm announcing the D3s this weekend. So, and I was announcing the NAIs last weekend. And then I announced a regional before then. So it's been busy. That's what I got. All that stuff you can have. All that stuff.
Yes.
MattTalkOnline.com/guide. Matt Stats, save $10.
Purchase the
It's
guide.
well worth the money.
It's well worth it.
Again, I'd like to thank, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys because, again, you guys brought me onto this show 3 years ago to kind of handle the heavy lifting behind the scenes. And it's been something you guys have been supporting this. And it's, again, you just, it's your show. I'm just here for it. And it's the opportunity to kind of pitch this because, I'm an independent media outlet. I am my own, I don't have, the check isn't written by somebody else. I got to go out and hustle for it. And this is one of the things that I've put together. I get it because it answers a lot of my questions. But honestly, this is the one thing everybody, and I say this, I'm gonna make some money off of this clearly. But as a wrestling junkie, this answers almost every one of your questions at your fingertips. So that's my pitch. MattTalkOnline.com/guide. If most of my buyers are repeat buyers. If they get it once, you're gonna get it again. And if you get it again, you're going to get a discount code for a discount off of next year. So if you ever play full price for it, you've missed a discount code or you're a first-time buyer. So that's what I got. MattTalkOnline.com/guide. From the makers of the Fargo Almanac and the Olympic Preview Guide is the Division I Preview Guide. So that's all I've got, gentlemen.
Okay, guys. On behalf of Jason and Kevin, look forward to seeing all you guys in my old home city in Philadelphia for the national tournament. Adios.
We're out.
Lagers and cheesesteaks for everyone.
Yes, soft pretzels and cheesesteaks.
Lager.
Go Danny DeVito.
Okay, lager, soft pretzels, cheesesteaks.
Lager.